When we talk about free speech, most of us instinctively defend it as one of the most sacred principles of a democracy society, of a democratic society. And for good reason. The ability to speak openly has fueled social progress, scientific discovery, and political reform. But the conversation often stops there, as though any critique of free speech is an attack on democracy itself. Today, I want to challenge that assumption. I am not arguing that speech should be abolished or tightly censored by the state. Instead, I argue that absolutely unrestricted free speech is neither sustainable nor ethical, and that societies must recognize and regulate the real harms that unbound speech can produce. The first issue with absolute free speech is simple. Speech can cause real, measurable harm. Philosopher John Stuart Mill, one of history's strongest defender of liberty, recognized that individual freedom ends with its causes direct injury to others. Yet, we often forget that this applies to speech as well. Words can ignite violence, despise communities, and target vulnerable groups in ways that produce long-term damage. Consider online harassment, coordinated disinformation, campaigns, or calls to violence distinguish as political expression. These aren't abstract concerns. They produce increased threats, psychological trauma, lost employment, and, in some cases, mass violence. Societies already restrict behaviors that cause harm, like fraud, defamation, or incitement, because we understand that unchecked actions are dangerous. Speech should not be the only domain where harm is ignored in the name of purity. Second, the idea that speech is natural, that everyone has equal ability to participate, is a myth. In reality, unrestricted speech amplifies existing inequalities. Those with more power, larger platforms, or greater financial resources can dominate the public conversation, drowning or marginalizing voices. For example, if hate speech is fully protected, the people most affected by it, racial minorities, LGBTQ communities, immigrants, bear the burden of consistent defending that their right to exist. The result is not an open marketplace for ideas, but a hostile environment where certain people feel unsafe or unwelcome to speak at all. In this way, unrestricted speech ironically restricts speech. If society genuinely values open expression for all, then it must recognize that harmful speech silences others and take steps to protect equal participation. Third, absolute free speech undermines the very foundation of democratic decision-making. Democracies function on the assumption that people can assess accurate information and use it to make rational choices. When disinformation spreads, unchecked whether through social media algorithms or deliberate propaganda, truth becomes optional and public trust collapses. We have already seen how the conspiracy theories and viral falsehoods can distort elections, fuel extremism, and weaken public institutions. Leaving this entirely unregulated is not a commitment to freedom. It is a surrender to chaos, to democracy. No democracy can operate. Its citizens cannot agree on basic facts. A common argument for absolute speech is the marketplace of ideas, the belief that truth will naturally rise above falsehood. But this metaphor assumes that people are rational, well-informed, and engage with ideas on equal footing. Modern psychology, however, shows the opposite. Humans are prone to bias, motivated motivated reasoning, and tribal thinking. False information spreads faster than truth, precisely because it is sensational and emotionally engaging. The internet does not function like a marketplace. It functions like an amplifier. Ideas don't rise because they are true. They rise because they are loud. Prioritizing or emotional clinging to outdated metaphors ignores the technological and realities that shape public discourse today. Finally, opposing absolute free speech does not mean supporting um, authoritarian censorship. It means acknowledging that speech, like any other powerful social force, needs reasonable boundaries. We already regulate many forms of speech, like threats, obscenity, and misinformation, because we recognize that some words carry consequences society cannot accept. The goal is not to silence dissent, but to create a healthier, communicative environment where debate can happen without fear, manipulation, or violence. Regulation can perceive the benefits of free expression while reducing its harms. In closing, the idea of absolute free speech sounds noble, but its real-world consequences are anything but. Unrestricted speech can harm individuals, silence vulnerable groups, distort democratic processes, and spread dangerous misinformation. Recognizing these problems does not make us enemies of democracy. It makes us responsible stewards of it. Free expression is essential, but it is not the only essential value. Safety, equality, truth, and social stability matter too. If we want speech to remain meaningful and not supply a weapon used against the vulnerable, then we must move beyond the myth of absolute freedom and toward a more thoughtful, ethical, and balanced approach. Thank you.